this building. And she said that to me. Oh, yeah. And so I'm like, well,
We're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. Madam Secretary, can you call the roll?
Counselor Collins?
Present.
Counselor Briggs?
Here.
Counselor Schilling? Counselor Shane? Counselor Barrientos?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes. The minutes are included in the packet. Does anyone have any changes that would like to make to the minutes? No? I will accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion, there's been a second, and the minutes are approved.
Well, call for the vote.
Call for a vote.
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved.
You have to vote too.
Did you approve the minutes, Carlos?
Yes.
All right. 3-0.
All right. Next up on the agenda is the city manager update. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right, thank you, Councilor Barrientos. So I just have one thing to talk about, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So as the council and the committee knows, we purchased the building next door to us here in the property for the Itemizer Observer. We did enter into a 1-year lease agreement with Country Media, which is the parent company of the IO. So they're going to continue to rent that, lease the front 2,100 square feet of the building. The remainder of the building, which is about 3,000 square feet behind, is not leased by them. And we're working with the police department and Tom and others to figure out what to utilize that space for. Training opportunities, maybe a weight room, something like that in the interim until we get through the process to decide whether or not the public will support the construction of a police station. So, so the lease will run through April of 2025. And then at that point, we can kind of go on a month to month because the election would then be in May. And, you know, if the election is positive and the outcome that we want, then we won't continue a lease long term. So that's kind of the status of the building. The status of the process for obtaining an architect. Kim Herring and our project manager, Michael Pierce, are working on getting the RFP finalized. They should have a draft to Lane and myself this week. That we can get out to the market next week. We'll have it advertised for about a month and then have it closed by the end of May so that we can then get a contract signed in June. So they can begin their work in June and for the rest of the calendar year. We're hoping to be able to have them complete their work with, you know, concepts, renderings, other stuff like that that could be shared with the public by the end of the calendar year. And so and with cost estimates for what the project would cost. We'll also engage with a bond company and legal and bond counsel to start preparing the work necessary to put the measure on the ballot in May. We'll probably start that in the fall, and they'll start coordinating with the architects to get the numbers, but they'll do a lot of legwork in advance of that. And so that's kind of the schedule of things we have planned. But we're hoping to wrap everything up by the end of December so that in January and February of next year, we can run through the process of getting the ordinances and the resolutions and the other things before the council to put the measure on the May 2025 ballot. Any questions about that?
Any idea of any conflicting measures that might be on that ballot from school districts or county at all?
Yep. So I talked to the school district. They don't have anything on that time frame. The county, I've talked with them. They may be eyeing a fairgrounds district at the same time. I've let them know about our plans, so that may influence their decision on that. I don't think they're in a huge rush to get that fairgrounds district on the ballot. But I know they want to try to target a May election. So if they do run with us at the same time, theirs is going to be, I believe, you know, less than 20 cents per thousand. So it should be a pretty minor thing. It wouldn't be stiff competition to go along with ours. the best case scenario is there's no competition. But that could be on the ballot at the same time. I'm continuing to work with the county to try to nudge them to a later year. So, but that's what I know so far. I don't know of any of the smaller special districts that are planning on going out, like the cemetery district or the soil and water conservation district. I haven't heard anything from them, so but I can follow up with them as well.
How far in advance? Do you have another question?
Okay, thanks.
How far in advance do the smaller districts need to give other municipalities a heads up that they may be also going out for some kind of a bond measure?
Yeah, so they don't, there's no requirement that they notify the other taxing districts. So it's just kind of a courtesy, we ask them to say, hey, are you planning on doing anything? We would know when there's a deadline by which the city or a special district or the county has to submit their petition to the county to get on the ballot, and that's all public record. So we would know
Okay.
by that deadline, which I believe is in early March or end of February. So
And that's the same as our deadline, so it
Right.
doesn't really give us any heads.
Right.
right,
it
doesn't give us any heads up. So I've laid the ground. I've asked the question with those that are would be like a harder, a stronger competition. The school district asking for like a major bond or a recapitalization of a bond, or the county doing something major. Sheriff's office doing something major. None of those things are on the ballot for next year, with the exception of that fairgrounds district. So, and that's in conceptual form right now. So I don't know if that was a date they were kind of looking at, but I don't know how serious that is. So I can follow up. That's my report on that. Any questions on any other public safety matters from my perspective? All right. I'll talk about one more actually. So our police chief, as I look at him, is planning on retiring next year. His contract with the city expires. So I'm working to talk to a few different recruiting firms over the next couple months in hopes of getting a contract signed by July 1st, so that we can have them work with the city and our department on putting together a good recruitment for a chief. About a year is a good amount of time that's needed to be able to do an adequate recruitment. And so hopefully we'll have a contract signed sometime in early July with a recruitment firm to help go through the process to get the city a replacement police chief when Chief Simpson retires next year. So,
That will be a national search.
yep. Yeah, it'll be a nationwide search. So, all right, that's it for me, Chair Barrientos.
Next up on the agenda is the fire department update, so I'll turn it over to Chief Wallace.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. Just want to give you a little update on what's going on with my department. Very excited to announce that all 16 of our full-time employees are off of probation, which is very exciting for us because for the first time in an entire year, we have not lost one full-time employee. So it's very exciting for us. We have 2 conditional offers out for flexible schedule employees. We had a single role employee interview today that went really well. We're down to 16 FSCs right now, which is our part-time folks. We had 2 leave us for full-time employment with other organizations. Our volunteer academy has 4 recruits currently. They'll be training until about the middle of June, where we will do a live fire exercise for them. We do have a burn to learn scheduled in May. We're going to be partnering with the cemetery district. There's a house that we responded to about 2 years ago for a structure fire. They decided that they wanted to go ahead and can burn it down completely. So they gave us the opportunity to train in that, which we're very excited for. We don't acquire houses very often. So we'll be using that as a live fire exercise for not only our personnel, but we've extended the offer to Falls City, Polk County Fire District number 1 and Southwest Polk Fire District. It's just a really good training opportunity. for our recruits as well as our full-time staff and our other volunteers. We have 3 of our brand-new volunteers who just completed their academy. They'll be receiving their badge and the completion of their 1-year probationary period. That will be presented at our May 1st business meeting. In addition, we'll have a recognition for a code save for one of our flexible schedule employees who had taken a very sick individual with one of our full-time employees to Salem Hospital, and during the transition from our staff to the hospital staff, this person went into cardiac arrest. Our employee got on to the cot and immediately began compressions on this individual and ultimately saved their life. So we will be recognizing this individual at our business meeting on the 1st. So as you know, you are all welcome to attend our dinner and our business meeting. It is the first Wednesday of every month. Dinner typically starts about 5:30, goes until about 6:45, with our business meeting immediately following at 7. You will notice that there's a picture of a fire truck up there. Really excited to tell you that Deputy Chief Rogers, Captain Nordyke, and Kent are back in South Dakota right now doing the final inspection. And so these are the photos that Josh sent me today. It's kind of neat. It says custom built for Dallas Fire and EMS. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I texted him earlier, but he's busy.
Is that a keypad?
I think so.
Public for a door lock.
She sure is pretty.
The nice thing about this particular engine, it's not a lot of electronic devices. Our other engine, if you've seen the 2015 Pierce that we have at the station, has a lot of electronic components to it. This one it's basic, but it's gonna provide everything that we need. We're gonna hopefully have it here in Hillsborough by the end of this week, the beginning of next week. There's professional movers that actually contract to move fire apparatus. So they'll be bringing the engine from South Dakota to Hillsborough to True North, where it will get it'll get mostly outfitted. And then we'll be bringing it home and adding the equipment, training on it we're thinking about a month to make sure that everybody's proficient in knowing how this engine operates, so we don't have any mishaps. And that's it. So once it arrives in Oregon, we will have the striping put on and our logos. We partner with Service Graphics. They do a wonderful job at getting our graphics together on there. Apparently, drives nice. According to Kent, it's a really nice rig. That's a quote.
Can you clarify why 3 of our staff needed to travel out of state?
So, and this was paid for by Spartan International. So they paid for the entire trip for them to go. Deputy Chief Rogers, because we needed some level of administration to travel, I think it was inappropriate for me to go. And Brian Nordyke was he's one of our captains, but also pretty instrumental in helping us come up with an appropriate apparatus that will suit our needs. And then we sent Kent McKnight, who is our lead fleet maintenance supervisor. And ultimately, he will be the one, him and his staff will be the ones that work on this particular piece of equipment. And we wanted to make sure that he was comfortable with it and felt that it was a solid piece of equipment for us to have.
So if anybody ever questioned why 3 people are going, we're sending admin,
Line staff
line staff, and fleet maintenance.
and our fleet maintenance, who's also an EVT. And like I said before, the nice thing about this was at no cost to the city other than the hours that they're gone.
Right.
Spartan paid for their entire trip.
And the purpose of the trip again was to inspect the vehicle, make sure it was what we bought, and that it's running properly and that there's no mechanical things that, need to be fixed or anything like that before it gets shipped out to us.
Correct. And this will happen one more time, not only by us, but by the personnel that work at True North. If there's any mechanical issues when it gets there, that would be something that they would work on there too. They're a contracted company for Spartan.
I got 3 questions.
Yes.
Can you tell us how much water this engine holds? Any new safety features that you didn't have on the older apparatus? And how long is the return on investment on this apparatus?
It's a 1,000-gallon tank. I don't know of any new safety features. Anything that would be safety related would be an NFPA standard. And I don't know what anything new that would be incorporated with that. And as far as the return, can you maybe
How
explain that?
long will this rig last?
Well, we hope it lasts for 30 years. That's our hope. And let's be honest. So with the fact that we have Kent McKnight and his fleet maintenance staff, 2 of them are EVTs, that does a lot for us as far as servicing our vehicles. They'll always be up to the NFPA standard. We have employees that are very in tune to how our vehicles operate. The turnaround time for anything being repaired is amazingly fast. So I don't expect there to be any issues with it, and it lasting a long time. So it's our hope.
And 1,000 gallons, is that, because isn't it normally 500 gallons for like the older ones, or is that standard?
I think it's just going to be preference. A lot of urban areas will have smaller, just because they have an immediate water source. Some have 750 gallons. We chose to go with 1,000 gallons. There's a possibility of us going out into a rural area. It might take a little bit of time to set up the hydrant. So it's just looking at what's going to be the most effective and efficient for us to be able to fight fire.
Awesome.
So Chief Wallace, just to kind of add a little bit more to the return on investment question, our current E102, how old is that?
28 years old.
Does that work well?
It actually does.
Yeah, so, and that's a credit to our fleet maintenance, crew that we have. We keep them up to date. We do more than just, change the oil and rotate the tires, and they go in and do a lot of work. And so, yeah, we keep our equipment, and especially our vehicles up to date and current and relevant, so they last a long time. So it's a credit to that team and to our staff that have vehicles to make sure that when there is maintenance needs, they're getting taken care of.
And
I would expect a 30-year return on investment.
So we've had issues with our 2015 Pierce. And Pierce even recognizes that it was a design flaw. So it really isn't the engine's problem, right? It's the way that it was designed and manufactured. I think since then it's been remedied. But that is why we've had so many issues with that particular engine. When you build the motor and you put your electronic components below where your cooling system is, you're probably going to have an issue with that. Since then, it sounds like they've recognized that that is a problem and have changed that design.
And don't you see this engine, if I remember, before we purchased it, we were actually excited about the simplicity.
Yes.
And meaning there's dials and gauges and valves instead of electronic components that would and possibly fail.
Correct.
And they're easier actually for our staff to work on.
Yeah, and if you would look, engine 102, our 2000, it's 1996. It's mostly mechanical. There's very few electronics on that particular piece of equipment.
And sometimes, do you find it easier to train on the older equipment, the more tried and true?
That's kind of a loaded question because it depends on what generation we're teaching.
Sure.
And it depends on their skill level. We have some of our staff are very familiar with how big engines work, dump trucks, tractor trailers, and have a little bit more patience with being able to put it in gear, to pump, how the gauges work, that kind of thing. Some of our maybe newer generation employees are more electronic driven. I think this will be a good compromise for everybody involved. When you look at the pump panel, can I make it bigger?
So we're not getting rid of any equipment, are we? Just adding this to the fleet?
So we are adding this to the fleet. There has been a request made by Fleet Maintenance and also Fall City about the use of Engine 102. That will come at a later discussion. We're not quite there yet with that.
Like sublease it to them or something?
It would almost be like a user agreement. They would use it as long as we still maintain the rights to be able to have it back if we have any other equipment go out of service.
So is the intent to use this as the number one rig out the door and?
Yes.
Until they might lease it from us?
Yeah. And it wouldn't be a lease. It would just be just a user agreement. Yeah. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of discussion that needs to take place before that happens.
And that would be an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Dallas and Falls City, so that would come before the council for your consideration.
Okay. Any more questions about the engine? We're excited to let you all know that for about the first time ever, we're going to participate in a career day at Chemeketa. We're pretty excited about that. Kim Storms, along with one of our flexible schedule employees, they're going to head up tomorrow to Brooks campus and talk to some high school students about careers in fire and EMS. At the same time, myself and the shift on duty will be at the Blockrell Junior High School doing the same thing for 7th and 8th graders. And that kind of leads into, in the fall, we're excited, and I know I mentioned this before at the last meeting, but we're excited to know that we're going to be partnering with a high school CTE program for an EMR class. One of the staff that will be teaching that class will be going through our EMR class that we'll put on for our recruits at the end of this school year. So it'll be the first part of June when that happens. We're hoping from that we'll be able to recruit additional volunteers. So they'll have their EMR and then get them into that volunteer role so they can get their firefighter one. And then just one more piece of information. We are receiving 2 interns from Chemeketa. We'll have one assigned to a shift. And then I'm very proud to announce that one of our firefighter EMTs just completed the paramedic program, Nicole Schmidt. And she will be starting our newly developed FTO program that we put together within the last month. So she'll be about the first one that one of our full-time staff that we'll be putting through an FTO program. So it'll be a really good way for us to be able to judge where we need to make changes and what's working well.
Can you clarify what FTO is?
So it's a field, well, an FTO would be a field training officer, but it's a field training program. What this does is this allows the paramedic to be partnered with a more senior paramedic to just work on their skills, just to make sure that they are able and capable and comfortable to be able to manage patient care on their own with an EMT partner or another paramedic. That program for Nicole will be about 6 to 8 weeks. Our interns, on the other hand, which are brand new students with Chemeketa, the paramedic program, are just finishing up that paramedic program. That's more of about a 3-month to 4-month process. And then they go back to Chemeketa, and then they go on to a department that they can get hired on with. So do I have any questions?
How's the ASA thing working out?
We had our first meeting it's been about a month ago. There's some language differences that I'm going to be working with Lane on drafting some proposed language for our organization. There was just some confusion as far as in the draft NFPA standards, which are fire service standards, and OARs and ORSs. OARs are the Oregon Administrative Rules, and then ORS is Oregon law, which is more suited for EMS. EMS does not follow fire standards, so that needed to be taken out of that plan. But I think we're working in a really good direction. I haven't seen an update for another meeting, but they're working on getting that draft proposal together, and then we'll have another meeting to discuss the changes in that.
Yeah, on the on the OARs versus the NFPA standards, I think there was pretty good consensus among all the providers that that needed to change. So that'll be beneficial, I think, to everyone, including the city of Dallas and the other agencies, as far as response times and things like that, that'll be included in the plan. And then there's probably the one area where there's going to be some disagreement will be on the how transfers take place from West Valley Hospital. And so we're going to propose some language that gives us the exclusive right to those transfers because it's within our ambulance service area response area. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to kind of, pin that down so that we don't see other agencies coming in and taking transfers when those really should go to us as the, the closest responder and being within our ASA. So we'll work laying on getting some draft language for that, but we feel pretty good that that's going to happen.
Well, and I should mention to you that I know Councilor Schilling, you'd asked about mutual aid response. So that actually triggered some data points for us that we are not very good data keepers when it comes to that. It was difficult for us to be able to track that within our report writing system. We've since changed that, and we're able to. It's a training issue on our part as far as making sure that our staff is entering the mutual aid received and the mutual aid given appropriately. So we're working from those data points, and we should have a pretty good idea, I would think, by the end of this month, where we lie on that. And then I did forget to add this part. We're looking at actually purchasing a new ambulance for a transfer medic. We're looking at 3 bids currently. They range anywhere from $220 to about $280. This will help us take off the mileage that we're currently putting on our first out ambulances. It'll be beneficial in the long run to be able to have that transfer ambulance assigned specifically for that transfer. So last month we had 170 transfers from the hospital. So you have to think about the fact that that's how many times we drove to Salem and back. So it's a lot. It adds up very quickly.
Where are we with the transport IGA? I don't know if it was an IGA with the hospital and we were gonna get a special rig. I think is what we-
Yeah, we're fully functioning on that. The West Valley Hospital has 2 full-time positions, paramedics that are assigned to the transfer ambulance. It is a shift that we have within our daily operations. Typically, it's one of our our firefighter EMTs or one of our single role EMTs or paramedics that is the driver for that. So far, it seems to be working well.
Great.
We meet every other week with West Valley Hospital ER staff. The nice thing is that they've added a house supervisor to their staff, which communicates with our captains directly. So it's one point of contact from the hospital, one point of contact for our department, which I think has made a huge improvement in how the transfers are sent out. And they're more than willing to wait for those transfers, unless obviously it's an emergent transfer. And if we're not able to handle that, then we do source it out to our mutual aid partners. But so far we've been able to handle the transfers that are coming in. And I think a lot of it is that communication between the one staff member from the hospital and our staff member too. So.
More questions, Brian. If I remember during our discussion with Polk County commissioners, they were pretty adamant that the transfers were Dallas's.
Yeah, and so again, I think there's language in there right now that talks about the right of first refusal, and so the language that's in there is kind of confusing. So that's where there was some discussion at the ASA meeting about, hey, what does that mean? Should we have that language? Should we get rid of that language? And we agree that that language is somewhat confusing. We understand kind of how it's been used, but we're fine to remove that. We just want to make sure we replace it with language that does say that, hey, the transfers belong to the ASA that the transfers are coming from, which is Dallas's ASA. So Lane's going to help us draft some just exclusivity clause that belongs to Dallas, and I don't see a lot of pushback when that goes to the full committee, and I do expect the commissioners to support that when that plan gets adopted.
Just making sure.
Yeah, okay.
Because I remember specifically during the meetings asking that question, and the the commissioners were in direct support of Dallas maintaining that and not having that taken away from them.
Right, yeah, and the commissioners, they understand the need for Dallas to be able to maintain that, to, keep our operation, where it is in terms of function and revenue and just our operations. So again, I don't expect to see any change other than just some clarifying language to make that mean what it says.
Are they still running 2 ambulances? Polk County?
Southwest Polk.
Southwest Polk.
I think it just depends on the day and their staffing level. I don't know if I can answer that.
It just seems to me, I thought it was 2, and if they take 1 out for transport, it kind of defeats the purpose of.
And you also have to consider too that they're a fire district, so their employees that are on the ambulance would also be the employees on the fire engine as well. But we typically get daily staffing reports from them. So we do, I think, a good job at communicating what their needs are and where our staffing levels are too. But we also communicate with Polk County Fire District as well, so. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda is Police Department update, so I'll turn it over to Chief Simpson.
Okay, thank you, Chair Barrientos, committee members. Appreciate you all being here. I don't have a whole lot to share with you today, but I do have a little bit, and happy to answer any questions you might have. Update on our staffing, we're doing well there. We still have 1 officer vacancy, and we're taking our time and looking for that perfect fit there. So we're still recruiting for that. Our records section, all of our civilian positions are fully staffed. I've only got 1 troop in the academy right now, the last one we hired, so we'll get him back here in a few months and dig into his field training. A new car that I mentioned to you that we've had sitting around waiting for parts for since last fall, October, is getting built now. The parts finally came in. They told us we should have it by the end of this week, which is good. So that'll get that one on the road. Hopefully they're not just being optimistic, but we'll see where it goes. So we're also working on a cadet program. I mentioned this a little bit in our annual report, but our SRO and Sergeant Hamilton's been working together to look at some policy considerations we need to add to take care of it, and also what it's going to cost us as far as some basic minimal equipment they may have before we get it into place. I want to know before we dive into it for sure that it's something that we can handle fiscally. But it's looking good, and I'm hoping to get moving on that before too long once we get a final report back in. When our SRO, when school shuts down here about the 2nd week of June, we'll probably be pulling our SRO onto day shift to help with the call load and also to help with some traffic safety issues that come up. So it'll be another body for that. Accreditation is continuing to go well. We have 2 minor pieces on our self-assessment we have to finish up, should be done this week. The Northwest Accreditation Alliance has a schedule for the end of April to start the online assessment part. Once the online assessment's done, they'll plan to come here about the 2nd or 3rd week of May for an on-site assessment for, is it sort of our final check ride. So we should get our accreditation award, barring any unforeseen things. But if something comes up, it's just usually a matter of something we need to fix. And we're pretty optimistic about that. So that's going well. About all that I have. Anything new going on right now? If you have any questions, I'm happy to see what I can do. Sure.
So when they come out to do the on-site, will we have an opportunity to utilize that for the new potential building Or do they only look at what is currently existing?
Yeah, what they're gonna be doing, they're gonna be looking at, of the 102, 104, whatever standards there are, they're gonna be taking, a lot of that they'll be able to address online through the software that we use. But some of it that they wanna see here, they wanna look at our evidence room, they wanna look at our facilities that we're working with right now. And while they may know that we're working on a facility in the future, it's really not relevant to this accreditation.
Okay,
So, they'll just be taking a look at the stuff that they can't do virtually.
Can you give a accreditation 101 to me, or to us? I might not know what that means.
Okay, well, there's, let's see, how do I best put this? To be an accredited agency basically means that you have met a standard that's been established for a region or a state. And we used to have what was called the Oregon Accreditation Alliance, which was just Oregon. It's expanded recently, but it's a subdivision of the Oregon Chiefs Association. It expanded recently because we've taken on Alaska. And as you may have noticed, the legislature a couple years ago required accreditation for agencies over, I think, 35 staff or something like that. And it's just a matter of time before it becomes required for smaller agencies. And what it means is, for example, there's an accreditation manual that's together, and there's about 102, 104 standards. For an example, it says, and it doesn't tell you what to do, but what you have to at least address. For example, one of the standards is you have to have an oath of office when you hire an officer. And for that standard, for example, that says you have to have an oath of office, then we have to show that we have in policy that there's an oath of office, and then we have to show an example to proof, they call them proofs, and they'll dig into somebody's personnel file, and here's that oath of office to show that we're doing what our policy says that we're supposed to do. And there's a lot of variety. Really, the evidence room is probably the most particular, how it requires periodic inspections and audits by people that, in other words, I would have someone that's not affiliated with the property room do an unannounced audit to go in and check a few things off. And there's specific forms to fill out and do those on either an annual, semi-annual, or a monthly basis, depending on what it is. What accreditation does basically is all of these different standards are laid out, and it says if an agency is accredited, it means that they address all of these standards and they have it in policy that they do this. It doesn't tell you how you do it, but that you address it. And it's basically a situation that says that we're doing the best job we can for our community. And if an attorney, for example, from a litigation standpoint, starts to look at an agency and see if you have someone that's not accredited, then you'll dig a little deeper to see. And what I've learned digging into this process, there are agencies in the state, and I'm sure Carlos may have seen them, that have very, very little in the way of policies and procedures, and they're just kind of running off the seat of their pants. And becoming accredited, it just makes sure that you're not in that crowd. And I think what we're going to see in the not too distant future from our state legislature is that every agency is going to be required to be accredited by a certain period of time. So we've been working on this for a number of years. We had to stop it just because we didn't have the staff to do it. And bringing this admin sergeant position in play was something that helped out to give someone time dedicated to work on this. So, and once we get our accreditation too, you have to get reaccredited every 3 years. So there's not as much intensive time going into building that reaccreditation when it happens, but the stuff that has to happen along the way every year to make sure that you're doing what you say that you're supposed to do. For example, where we might need a proof now of one particular thing that we've done within this past year, for the initial, that one will do it. But when we get to the third year for the reaccreditation, well, we got to prove that we do it every one of those years in between. So there's more proofs required, but we just got to make sure that we stay on top of what we're supposed to do and don't just ignore stuff. Looking at uses of force annually, looking at pursuits annually, looking at whether we have any bias crimes or not. All those things we have to look at and document and keep track of. Personnel complaints, all of it.
So I think, kind of a high level picture like Tom painted is that the accreditation says that we as an agency, abide by and meet, a certain level of standards, and we've demonstrated that we do that. It's nice for people that are looking to come work for your agency, especially laterals who might say, hey, you know, the agency I'm working for, I have all these issues because, you know, they kind of fly by the seat of their pants. They have, you know, some policies, but not other policies. And so I'm going to go work for an agency that I know has their act together. They look for accredited agencies. And so it can be used as a recruitment tool for us to say, we are an accredited agency. So a police officer who's been in the business will know what that means. And they'll be like, hey, that's a place that I know if I go there, they should have their act together and policies that, you know, are to my benefit and to the benefit of the organization. So it's a good thing to do. I think Tom, you know, Chief Simpson's right that we will see the Oregon legislature eventually require accreditation from more agencies, not less. And we might just grow into that need anyway as our community grows. But I think being proactive with it, making sure that, hey, we are, you know, meeting those standards and doing what we should be doing from a law enforcement perspective is important. And so I'm grateful for the work that the department has put into that and Tom's leadership.
Is there a list of towns in Oregon that are accredited that
There is.
we could
I can
email?
get it. I'm actually a member of the Accreditation Alliance Board through the Chiefs Association, so I can get that. I just don't have it off the top of my head. So,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, I'll bring it in. It's a growing number. They're staying really busy. They've actually brought staff on because it's becoming more and more common now.
How many staff do we have now? 25 or so?
For our department,
Yeah.
20, let's see, we have 23 sworn and 4 civilian that were authorized. We're down 1 sworn right now.
Okay. And you say the bar is 32 or more?
I
Right
want to
now.
say, I believe it was 35
35.
sworn or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers. And they had a number of years to get there because even the legislature understands it's not a quick process. But the larger agencies were mandated now, and they understand also that it's tougher for the smaller agencies. And frankly, I think what it was a, I don't want to say shot across the bow, that's not what I mean, but it was kind of a little heads up that, okay, the smaller agencies, you're going to be doing this too, so we know it's harder for you, so you might want to start now so that when the time comes, it's not such a heavy lift, so. Any other questions?
I have one brief question, and maybe you can't answer this, but can you share with us anything about the Majestic fire, as far as if there's a suspect in custody, what the charges are, and how much damage to the building was?
Chief Wallace might be able to give you a little bit more on the damage. I can tell you we have a suspect in custody. We identified her fairly quickly. The itemizer misstated that it was a male. It was a female, actually. She was charged with arson, criminal mischief, burglary, and something else. I don't remember exactly what it was, but we had her in custody before the day was over. Chief Wallace can probably give you a little bit more update on the damage, however severe it was. It's pretty superficial.
It was, mostly just heat and smoke damage.
Remember some of the, little bit of char on some of the outside.
I think the biggest concern was that the fire was going to go into the basement. I don't know if you all knew that there was a basement in the bottom of the Majestic, or any of it, but there is. Apparently with bunk beds. But they were concerned that the fire was in that part, and then they checked for extension up into the apartment that's up above, and there was nothing.
Thank you.
We had code enforcement look and make sure that nobody's living in that house now.
In the period anybody was living in.
Okay,
They-
just miscellaneous bunk beds.
It appeared that nobody had been in there for a very
Okay.
long period of time.
Storage bunk beds, maybe. Okay.
This is totally off the subject and they probably don't know. Is it a straight balloon frame building? Are there fire breaks, do you know?
Good question.
I did not ask that, but I can certainly find that
Just,
out. My guess is there probably is not, due to
Yeah,
the
it's-
age of that building.
I would guess it's a straight shot.
But it's been redone.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
unfortunate part is that when, there's utilities that are added to buildings like that, they don't always follow fire code. And then they're putting holes into
Fire.
walls that should not have holes in them, so now your fire barrier has been compromised. I can't say that that's the case in this building, but we do see that a lot in the older buildings that we don't.
Well, usually your draft stops are gone.
I'm betting there's a lot of holes in this building.
Do we have an update on Pallet Mountain?
You have an update on the western pallet on the mill site, April?
Am I talking about
to best dispose of the pallets, and I explained to him until there is an absolute abandonment of them, it's kind of something that he needs to do with that. So I will follow up with him later this week. I know that he's been very diligently trying to get them removed.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other further questions?